What's up, everyone? So this is going to be my official release for my sheriff candidacy in Camden County. I have filed the $100 to be a candidate. I legally can't win. I'll get to that a little bit more in a second. I'm not a politician. I don't want to win. I'm just running strictly to say the things that need to be said. This isn't really going to bring me anything besides heartache, but I feel that somebody needs to do it, so I'm just kind of putting myself out there, and I'm really setting the groundwork for 4 years from now. I'm hoping somebody else will take these ideas of liberty and freedom and pick them up and run with them, because that's fundamentally what I'm after here is freedom and liberty, and I feel that these are under threat and have been for a long time, and we got to do something to give the power back to the people. So this is going to be how we do it, and I think that with freedom comes peace, because everybody's just sick of being forced to live by everybody's ways, and these constant laws are being passed, and it's being run by money and by corporations and lobbyists. And when politicians pass 1,000-page laws that they don't even read, this is no longer run by we the people, it's run by money. So we have to figure out a way to overcome that, and this is my thoughts on how we can do that. And I can't legally win because I practice what I preach. I don't pay my taxes. I feel our federal government is a bunch of criminals, and as far from a sheriff's standpoint, if you've helped fund a criminal, you're an accessory to that crime. So as sheriff and somebody who is trying, I believe in the no victim no crime principle. So but if there is victims, there is a crime there. So a lot of misdemeanors I don't feel should be pushed, but the bigger crimes, I feel there needs to be justice, and the biggest crimes of all are being committed by our politicians on a federal level, and I will not morally fund this anymore, and I will not be a part of it. I've made mistakes in my life, and I owe them a lot of money from mistakes I made, and I didn't have that stance at the time. I was just dumb. I made money and I didn't pay the government, and I was stupid. But now my views have changed, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't give them money to squander and to spend on the things that they do. And I just, like I said, I don't want to contribute to their crimes that they're committing. I don't morally agree with what they're doing. And the Amish don't pay taxes, and I believe in like a karma thing and doing to others, and I won't do it. I won't do it. So that's why I can't win, because I can't pass the ethics commission. They won't allow me to, because I have to show my taxes and where I've paid. So that's why, and everything I'm doing, I'm strictly putting myself out there with a big target on me, just to try and help the world and to help ensure freedom and to try and help future generations and my kids, because I feel that all I see is conflict, and that conflict's being brought on by our federal government, and it's like they push it on purpose. And if people had the freedom to do their own thing, I think we'd create peace, because that's fundamentally what I'm after, is just trying to create peace in this world. And through freedom we can do that, because everybody wouldn't be forced to live by another person's rules, and as long as there is no victim, there should be no crime. That's the principle that I abide by, and that's how far I'll push everything. And I'm openly telling everyone, if I was to get elected as sheriff or write-in, I can't legally win, but I have a plan that I'm going to go through if I was to get lucky enough to win on a write-in, which of course I don't think I will, but that's as far as I will take it. No victim, no crime, and from there we need to start looking at the crimes that are being committed and start solving them, because it seems like there's a never-ending slew of crimes that are being committed and they're not getting solved. And then at the same aspect, we have all these victimless crimes that generate money for the court, and there's always police officers to stop you for that and generate money for the court, but there's not any for solving crime. So I'm trying to logically maybe ease up a lot on that and not worry about the no victim, no crime, only answer to responses, and start solving crimes, make all these police officers detectives, and hold people accountable for their actions when there's crimes committed, and just work. Obviously we have to have a legal system and a justice system in place in order for society to function and to exist, but I think it's being exploited for monetary gains right now, and that's where I'm trying to break down these walls on all levels, from federal to local, and on every aspect of it. So I fundamentally believe that any question should be answered with freedom, and libertarians will really appreciate my perspective. as long as there is no victim, of course. But I've created a local, a political system, I guess, political stance. I call it localism, and it's where the local community can decide the fate of their own laws and their own ways locally and how they want to do things. So my idea of localism is where the local community says that the bigger governments, we will no longer abide by your ways and do our own thing. So that's what I've created. I've created an idea, I call it localism, and it's where we put the Bill of Rights. We basically run a community around the Bill of Rights. There's 3 basic laws. The first law is no victim, no crime. The second law is if there is a victim, due process must occur. Due process is the fundamental basis for our society. Jury nullification is very important as far as that goes too, because that's a way of checks and balances for the people to checks and balance the court. And I have another idea for checks and balances that I'm going to come up with as well. But it's basically basing society around the Bill of Rights and going from there and letting the local community decide. I did write a book on all of this. You can check out my book. I call it A Handbook to Freedom. I'm giving it away for free. I'm not trying to sell the book. I don't even care. I've got a lot of money. It's basically my life's work, and I haven't even sold a copy yet. I haven't taken any money from anybody in any way. But I'm giving it away to try and help the world. You can find a PDF of it in previous videos. It's hard for me to, I'm not good with computers, so it was hard for me to be able to get it, but I think I got it good enough to where people can download it. And please feel free to download it and share it and keep it. And in case they delete it, it's nice to have too. That way it can never be shut down. I think that we need to open source our ideas and try and help the world instead of trying to take our ideas and use them for monetary gain and stuff. But that's all separate. That's a way down different rabbit hole. So in order to make this work and in order to make this function, there's a thing called a home rule charter, and that's what the people can do locally. Is we can vote in, we can pass around petitions, and that's what this all revolves around. Basically, is passing around petitions and letting the local community decide. Because I would never do anything. I have my own views and stuff, but that's why I can't even officially run, and I can't officially win, because I don't want to enforce the rules the way they are now. So if I was to win now, I would put the groundwork of setting up petitions for 4 years from now to where we can decide in things like this home rule charter, and we can change the way that things are done. So that's fundamentally where I'm at, and it doesn't even have to be me. Like I said, I hope that everybody in every community everywhere takes this idea and runs with it and do it everywhere. It ain't me. This ain't me. This is the idea, and that's why I'm just saying the things that need to be said. So we take a home rule charter and we vote it into effect. And at this point, the people now have basically ultimate power locally. It's a legal thing that they can do. Some states don't abide by it, some do, but whatever, man. If you guys decide it and vote it into effect, that's the way things are supposed to work. As long as, like I said, no victim, no crime, due process, and then the Bill of Rights. That was the other thing. The 3 laws above all else is no victim, no crime. If there is a crime, due process must occur. And the third law is the Bill of Rights, basically. So we get to the home rule charter. After we vote the home rule charter into effect, there's a bunch of other laws or ways that I'd like to try and enact. I think that one of them would be a Bill of Rights Protection Act, obviously, or a Bill of Rights Protection law, to where the Bill of Rights is absolutely protected in all aspects. Another one would be taxes, making taxes voluntary. I feel that taxation is theft, and if you're not voluntarily giving something, then at that point it's theft, and that's the way the law works legally. If somebody comes and takes something from me and I don't want them to take it, that's theft. So I know it sounds crazy, but I think that we could make voluntary taxes. There's a bunch of different ways you could. Think if we didn't have to pay 30% of our federal taxes, and we could instead invest that money locally right here into our communities. Think how strong our communities would be. If you look around, our communities run everything. The federal government doesn't really run stuff. Our communities do. So if we all had another 30% of our incomes to raise up our communities, imagine how amazing they would be. So local businesses would freely and voluntarily be able to decide the sales tax that they wanted to charge. The local community or the local business could say, okay, I want to charge 0% sales tax and keep my prices low. Or another business could say, you know what, I want to charge 50% sales tax, give 25% of it to the school, the other 25% to the roads. And people can voluntarily decide from there which business they want to shop with. And from there, once things are struggling, people are going to donate to that more. And if things are going good, you know, things will be going good. So it's a way for the local community to keep absolute control. And from there, I think that fines are a major problem, because right now our court system is based on money, and what they do is they try and process you as fast as they can. They pull you over, they give you a ticket for a victimless crime that they make money off of, process you through the court and get you in and out, and all they care about is that dollar bill. And I go to court and I see courtrooms full of people that are, most of the time, for traffic court especially, it's the crime is a victimless crime, and their crime is being poor a lot of the time, like no insurance, not having the money to register their vehicle, but still having to work to feed their kids and get to work and drive. Like, these are major scenarios that people have. And so when you give, that's where the system's flawed, is when you give somebody a punishment that says, okay, I want to take your money. Money is not a fair punishment for everybody. For a single mother that doesn't have money for insurance and is struggling just to get electricity and feed her kids, and doesn't have $100, and that's her, now you're going to give her another $100 fine. That's not the same punishment as a doctor that's driving by in his Porsche or Lamborghini and gets a $100 fine for speeding. You know, that's not the same punishment. Their punishments aren't equal. It's not the same. And so you got to understand that fundamentally the only thing that's equal in our life is time, because we all have so much time on this planet. We don't know when or how much that time is. And so if you want to make true punishments fair and just, and justice in a justice system, which is what it's supposed to be, you make it equal for everyone, and you create community service, and you say, okay, now you've done a crime, you're going to pay the community. Especially if there's no victim, you're going to pay the community. I personally will take it as far as the no victim, no crime. But yeah, if there's no victim and the victim is the community, you should have to pay back the community. And through doing that, you do community service. And even like right here at this park I'm at, instead of growing normal trees, we could grow fruit trees, and the people could work to, you know, take care of them. That could be part of your thing. And we could have community gardens all over every piece of public land. We could have bushes, you know, and just everywhere. And people who get in trouble, they could work together with the community to make the community better. And anytime there's a problem in the community, and a lot of the community people that work and have jobs, we could replace those with even community service. Now, there's a line to where you start enslaving people, but that's why I feel no victim, no crime. If there's actually a victim, you know, then there needs to be retribution, and that's a fair form of punishment for everybody, is a public service, you know. And in turn, what it's going to do is it's going to make our communities great, because it's going to lift us all up, and it's going to make the community better. And if somebody works to make the community better and do something, you don't ever want to break what you just work to make better. That's just a natural, inherent thing that's inside of us. You don't want to work and build something and then go, oh, I want to break it down. So if we did use community service as a punishment, I think that would be a lot better idea. So I think that we could vote that into effect. That's, once again, pass around petitions. Under the Home Rule Charter, we decide our own ways. And once we pass the Home Rule Charter, we can, once again, pass around petitions. And these will be petitions that we all do. Bill of Rights protection, taxes voluntary, abolish fines and create community service. We could even do a local currency. The federal government manipulates the currency and takes advantage of us all by printing money, you know, squandering it, doing everything they do. And what they're doing is actually robbing from us. It's stealing from us, and it's such a small level to us that we don't notice it. But on a massive level times trillions, it's massive. It's massive, and the things that they get away with and the things that they do. And it's just over time, once they repeatedly do it, at some point we got to realize that the system isn't working. So the best way to have a currency is to have a tangible object to back it. You can't create it out of thin air, because then it can be manipulated. So you have to have a tangible thing to back it. Gold and silver work great, but gold and silver can be monopolized, and somebody can get all the power in that. So what do you do to overcome that power? I think that we could create, as crazy as it sounds, a hemp depot to where people grow hemp locally, and we take it into this depot, and the depot processes it. So when somebody grows hemp, they get hemp dollars for their raw product. And then they go out into the community and they spend these dollars. And then the community comes into the depot and they say, hey, we would like to buy this hemp in oil form. Henry Ford was running his cars in the 1930s on hemp, running them. They were made out of hemp, 5 times stronger than steel. He's on the cover of Popular Mechanics holding a sledgehammer. And so hemp seeds are more protein than sunflower seeds. They make hempcrete. They got clothing, medicine. We can literally do anything with hemp that we can make with any other product. And it's biodegradable, and it's clean, and it's a super sponge for CO2. So it'd clean the earth as we do it. And anybody can create it anywhere, and it's a tangible object that can't be manipulated because it's renewable. So that's what if it's not hemp, I think that's whatever we figure out is the most useful, renewable resource that anybody can grow or anybody can create should be the base of our currency. And that's whether it's hemp or whether it's anything else. It has to be a tangible object. It has to be something that's renewable and that anybody can create to make it fair. And so that's the trick, and I think the hemp is the answer. But anybody else out there with better ideas, please let me know. But that would give the power to the people. We create our own local currency, and from there, we run our things locally. And there's other ideas where after 10 years, if you live in a community, you get a one-time lump sum of, let's say, $50,000 or something. So this can be a way to generate money and get the money out into the community to where it's a fair way to get it into the community, because you got to keep everything fair. And if you do print more money, release the money and how much it is all on the same day, and then that way interest rates can be passed on all at the same time. I know I'm going way down the rabbit hole, so I shouldn't go too far down this, but it's in my book. You can read it if you want to check that out. So we get a local currency from there. Ban the federal government, because I believe they're doing criminal actions and that what they're doing is wrong. So if we vote to ban the federal government and not have their power inflicted in our community, where our community rises up and stops them if they try to arrest our citizens for whatever, any of their federal laws, the FDA, the stuff that they're doing, I think that if we even created like a local grocery store, like a consignment store, we could get local control of the food, because right now we don't have freedom because we don't have control of our food, and we're dependent on a food system that could go down at any time, and that's a threat to all of our survival. So we need to figure out a way to create food locally everywhere, and to do that the most logical way is to create a grocery store consignment store to where everybody pitches in and throws in their extra food, and then it's the same kind of concept as the depot, to where you got a money in there to where you can go buy other people's products, and it all kind of works out. It'd be a little bit hard to get going, but the FDA would not be approving of that because they don't like any local things or anything happening, and that's where we just have to peacefully step away and say, you know what, FDA, we're going to ban you and not allow you in our community. And the same thing, like maybe even for taxes, if we say that, taxation is theft and we're going to stand by that, you're no longer, we now have a voluntary taxing society. So if the IRS steps in foot in our county or wherever, our province or whatever we've decided the limits of our boundaries are, then we will arrest the IRS. I know it sounds crazy, and arrest the federal government. And I think that anything bloody or violence is not good in any way, shape, or form. We need to find a way to do it peacefully, but probably without weapons. That way we could, I personally have a plan that if I do it, I'll stand up by myself, basically in football gear, and say, all right, let's go. Probably not football gear, but I'm not going to be violent, but I will physically detain and do what it takes, and we're going to have a wrestling match for sure. And that's not violence the way I see it. I've done a lot of wrestling in my life, and it's just detaining a suspect. And if your taxation is theft, and if you're helping steal from somebody, you're an accessory to a crime. So they have their perspective, I have my perspective, but it's a line in the sand that I've drawn, And if elected, that's the only way I'm ever going to do this, because I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to go, hey, IRS, I'm gonna arrest you. I'm personally standing up for myself, and I got my line in the sand that I've drawn, and I believe in jury nullification, and I believe that I can represent myself in court. And if I go to court because of the IRS and they try to attack me or take me to court for my debt, I will say I will not help politicians or help fund criminals, and all I have to do is prove that my taxes are going to fund breaking the law. And if I can prove that at any point, then I prove that I don't want to be an accessory. So all I have to do is prove that the government broke the law in some way, shape, or form, the federal government, which is a cakewalk. The reason why this hasn't happened and the reason why nobody's doing this is because in order, they say, the Constitution is the greatest thing that we have, and it says that we always have the ability to go to a jury trial publicly. And this public jury trial makes everything to where we, the people, is a checks and balances. And so we can have this public jury trial at any time. They've manipulated the system to where you have to have a lawyer, which makes it real easy for them to go in and out. No laws are ever questioned, nothing's ever changed. But with jury nullification, the jury has the right to decide the guilt or innocence of the not only the guilt or innocence of the person on trial, but also the law itself. So what a jury can do is they can say, this guy did break the law, but that law is not just, so we're going to throw that out. And I believe that I can go to court and say, I am not going to be an accessory to a crime. I will not fund these criminals. And all I have to do is prove that the federal government's a criminal, and from there, I should be able to have a jury of 12 of my peers dismiss it. Lawyers have bar licenses, and if they ever question the law, they will lose their bar license. And that's why this doesn't happen. And that's why they try not to let people like me stand up. But I know how to use my constitutional rights, and I will use them. And that's where this all comes from. And that's why I'm running for sheriff, because I'm openly saying, look, you guys are breaking the law. I'm not the one breaking the law here. You guys are criminals, and I'm going to stand up, and I've had enough. And I know it sounds crazy, but me personally, I'm putting myself out there to that extent, and I will represent myself in court. I'm not scared of them in any way, shape, or form. Anyway, all I have to do is prove that the government's criminals. Easy task. It's an easy task in my mind. And from there, they have to give me the power to speak, the freedom to speak, which I'm guaranteed by the Constitution. So they can't take my constitutional right, and if they do, they'll show the whole world how corrupt they are, because I want to make it a documentary. This right here is part of my documentary. It's all part of my plan. So if they want to, this is it. This is my line in the sand, and I'm saying this is where I stand, people. As far as them coming in, I would never stand up to them physically in any way. If they come tomorrow and want to arrest me, I'll say, all right, let's go. I'm glad. Let's do this. I've been waiting to get this for the last 20 years. You guys have had a stress on me for so long. Let's do this. I want to get this over with. And I'll gladly go to court, and I will gladly go to trial. And then I just asked for my public jury trial in the IRS, and to talk to the IRS, and please, everybody watch it. But as far as ever taking them on and putting hands on them, that's insane. That's insane. I would never do that unless you people elect me as a write-in. And I don't really necessarily want to do that, but if the people stand up and say, look, I agree with what Josh is saying, and I agree with this stance, and I've had enough of the federal government pushing us around and intruding on us and stealing a third of our life's wages, an entire life. Think of it, a third of your life you're going to waste giving to these people, and it's all just fraud to me, and I will no longer do it. Anyways, went way too far down that rabbit hole. I'm sorry, people. I'm sorry, everybody. But that's why I guess I'm just saying what I think that needs to be said, and I'm just putting it all out there, and I'm laying it all out. I know it sounds wild, but if you think about it, it logically makes sense. So that's where I would be if I get elected. I would physically detain the federal government, and I'd probably still end up in jail anyway, but at least I'd be elected by the people, and maybe there'd be some people there to stand up with me. But we'll see how that goes. Either way, if you do elect me, I'll stand up all by myself to the federal government. I don't care. even if I'm the only one out there. You got my word. And that's where I stand. So, but like I said, that's the only time I'll put hands on the federal government, because I'm not stupid. Only if you elect me. Anyways, all right. So, on down to the next one. Yeah, this is where we're going to get a little crazy as well. The no victim, no crime concept. So, like I said, if somebody hasn't harmed somebody, and harm is very up to the eye of perception. So there's no way to deny that stealing from someone or harming physically someone in any way. So if you physically put hands on anyone, if you touch anyone in any way, and in which they don't like it, that could be perceived as harm. So touch is definitely a physical is definitely a crime. Any physical crime is for sure a crime. Any theft of one's property or loss of something that's yours or your possessions, that should definitely be a crime. So within that, taxation's theft. There's a lot of things to where you can go in there. The no victim, no crime, that would include seatbelt tickets, throwing stuff like that out. A lot of stuff. There's a huge gray area, but from that mentality, as long as due process is allowed to occur, we can always create justice. So if there's no victim, there's no crime. But if there is a crime, we must let due process and justice occur. So this will in turn free up a lot of the police force and allow them to solve more crimes. And I think that this is fundamentally what we need as a society too, because then it's going to take the money out of everything. Like I said, if there's no more fines and we take the money out of it all, and maybe just have enough in court costs or whatever to pay the judges, or just to pay just bare minimum to keep things functioning, for people that are actually found guilty, then that's how it would go. So I'm going to catch a lot of flack on this, but it's a talk we need to have as a society. So I'm going to go ahead and just open up the door to this. I am willing to peacefully sit down and debate ideas with anyone anytime. So if you want to talk and debate this, please, let's peacefully debate. I'm just trying to find peaceful solutions in this world. But just think about what I'm saying, because I think that logically it makes a lot of sense. So if I'm going to throw out an extreme example to start with. But if this tree back here, if I want to go bang my head against that tree until I'm just bloody and die, that should be my freedom. I am my own individual person, and I should be able to do what I want with my body. That is where we should be, is that we have the freedom to do as we please. That's where I feel that we are with drugs, is that we have a drug war right now, and it's obviously failed. It's not working. We have prisons full of people, and it's private prisons that make a lot of money. These prisons fund our politicians, which create these laws, and they're full of victimless crimes. And when there's real criminals running around, and if you look at drugs, it's not just one side. That's the thing, is that we're being used as a society. Drugs are on both sides, and they tell you, oh, these drugs are bad, heroin is all bad and stuff. But then they sell it to you at the pharmacy. If you want to know where the drugs are, I've been pulled over and the cops have tried to ask me and said, where are the drugs? I say, well, I'll take you. I'll drive you right down the road, and it's a big building with drugs on the side. It says drugs real big. And so what we have to realize is that the problem is addiction, and that there are drugs everywhere on both sides. That we say these people are terrible over here, and that they're drug addicts that just need to go to prison right now. And then these other people over here, well, they need help, and the doctors are heroes because they're giving them drugs. And at the same time, what we aren't paying attention to or noticing is that we're developing a dependence, and that there's addiction. Addiction is the true problem. The drugs are not the problem. Addiction and what we have inside of us is the problem. And if you look at the the cause of addiction, most of the time, the cause of addiction is because of trauma and PTSD and something traumatic that's happened in somebody's life. And what they do is they try to numb it away. And that's where addictions stem from. And so it's heartbreaking. You have something that bad that happens to somebody, and it just destroys them, and then it perpetuates. And it's a cycle that won't quit. And people seek out these drugs to help numb it all away. And that's, everybody has their own drug of choice. And it seems like the whole world does a drug in some way. And it's fundamentally, if you believe in freedom, we all have to have the freedom to do that and to bang our head against the tree and to do harm to ourselves if we want. That should not be prospered off of by the prison system and throw people in jail and say, you guys are all going to go to jail and we're going to treat you badly and we're going to rip you away from your families and treat you like absolute criminals, while the doctors do the same exact thing these drug dealers are going for jail for, and they're treated as heroes. And these people develop lifelong addictions to pills that these doctors prescribe, and they don't even talk about it. They don't act like it's a major problem. Any pill, I'm talking barbiturates, opiates, any drug that you can get on the street, you can get better from the doctor. And I know a lot of people that would rather do drugs from the doctor because it's better. Adderall, meth, Dilaudid, morphine, Oxycontin, Percocet, all opiates. Opiate is heroin. Heroin, Percocet. Heroin, opiates. It's all the same. They're all the same family. It's just different levels. It's like heroin light, or just that's why people like getting their drugs from the doctor, because they know exactly what it is. When it's on the street, you don't know what it is, and it's dangerous to where people can die. And I think that's a crime, and that's when people need held accountable. If somebody dies because of something that you did or something that you gave them, yeah, you need held accountable, including doctors. You too. Yeah, you all need held accountable, because there's been a victim, and there's a crime that's been committed there. So yeah, it's a very gray line, but I think that what we're doing now is wrong, because we're just prospering on both sides. We got doctors making millions off prescribing addictions and creating addictions and destroying lives, and we got prisons just making all this money, and courts making all this money from people with addictions and destroying people's lives and ripping them away from their families. And then you got people overdosing and dying constantly. It's one of the major killers in this country, and it's just heartbreaking. I've seen it a lot in my life, and I've lost a lot of friends because of it, and it's hard. And even all stuff, legal, illegal, all of it. I've lost more friends from legal stuff, really, to be honest, and that's a problem. So I think that's what we need to focus on. Instead of focusing on putting people in jail for drugs, we need to instead focus more on rehabs and helping people and putting our arms around a brother and going, you know what, you got a problem, man, I love you, let's work together to fix this. And that's the thing about people that are going through addiction, is that they don't want to hear it, and they don't want it. So you have to let them come to you, and they will not necessarily come to you, but you have to let them be ready to quit, because if they're not going to quit, they don't want to. So if we can peacefully bring them up and get them help maybe cure whatever's ailing them inside, I think that would help cure the addiction. And so counseling and rehab and all this, there's always a jail cell open for somebody with a drug problem, but there's never a rehab open. I've tried to help so many people get into rehabs and who wanted to quit and get their lives together, and they can't, because there's nothing out there. There's no opportunity. There's no anything, and they're trying to get to it before it's a problem, before they get arrested. And some people even want to get arrested because they know that's the only way they can get a bed or get help, which is insane to me. It's insane that that's how far the system has come. So it's a major problem that we need to address, and that it's failed right now, and that we need to just basically acknowledge addiction and try and help addicts in this world, and just help each other from a loving, caring perspective. And instead of saying the government should do that, do it on our own, and just let people know that you love them and that you would like to see them try and do better, and just try and help them out. And don't be too judging, and don't be too mean, but just lift them up and try and help them through. And I think that's the hardest thing to do, because it's much easier to just turn your head and look away. So we just got to try and be be more loving and caring and compassionate and put boots on the ground and do it ourselves. Instead of saying the government should do that, or instead of just turning our heads to people struggling and hurting, we need to try and help them out. And I know it's crazy, but it's going to be what we need to do to fix things. So I guess my plan from here is to just let everybody know that if I do win, what my plans would be. I think the biggest thing we can do to give the power back to the people and ensure justice is ensure that the system won't be corrupted. Right now, qualified immunity allows our cops and politicians and judges to do whatever they want and get away with it. There's a law that enables them to do it to where they won't be held accountable, which is a major problem. So to eliminate qualified immunity in a sense and hold people more accountable and to make justice in this world, because right now a police officer can have a buddy that's committing a crime or another fellow officer, and they can turn their head and say, well, I didn't see that. And the prosecutor can do the same thing, because ultimately the prosecutor has the most power in the county, and they can decide anything they want, so they can throw anything out. They have the ultimate power. But if they have a friend that they're like, oh, well, I know them, or oh, I don't like that, or whatever, they can throw any case out. And it sets up a massive hole for justice, to where justice can't be achieved, and it will block off justice from truly being achieved, and it will create an opportunity for corruption, which is not what we want. And there's a bunch of corruption all over because the system is allowed to be abused, and there isn't a form of checks and balances. So that's what I'm proposing in order to get the power back to the people. This is going to be the most important thing, is the checks and balances ability. So what we do is, right on the courthouse steps, we create what's called a justice box. And this creates justice for anyone. And we put a live camera feed on this box at all times, to where anybody can walk up and put stuff in this box, put a file. You got a file, and so you take and you put your file in there, and that's evidence. And that's a case. And anybody can put a case in there at any time. And if anybody gets caught broken in the case, that's a big deal. You can't. It's going to be a live feed, so people will be able to see it and go stop them or whatever. So this justice box is right there at the courthouse on a live feed, everybody to see. Anybody can go in, put a file in of evidence at any time. Now from there, hopefully everybody in the county does it, but there's 40,000 people in this county, and we're going to say 10% of them, even 1% of them, but 10% of them, 4,000 people, say, you know what, I'll be a part of this justice box and ensuring justice always happens. And so each one of them say they'll do it, and then they get a number, and you get a number assigned for each person. And from there, once a month, we roll like Powerball or like bingo or whatever, not electronically, nothing that can be manipulated. But we roll and we get numbers, and the number is picked. Everybody has a number, and the number is picked. And from there, we get 10 people once a month that come, and they open up that box publicly on camera, and then they sit there, and each person, they hand around the file, and each person looks at the file, reads it over, and decides if they want that, if they think that should go to trial or not. And they read it over, look at the evidence, and say, this should go, and they vote. And they pass a silent vote. Nobody knows, what it is. And if at the end of it, we can decide whatever number we want, 6 or 8 or whatever. If 8 people decide that it should go to trial, it goes to trial. I don't want to do a full 10, because that would leave the ability open for somebody to say, I know that guy. I want him to not go to court. So if we do a unanimous, it still leaves the door open for a problem. So let's say we do a majority of 6 or 8 or whatever, and at that point, then it goes to a public jury trial, and it bypasses the prosecutor, it bypasses the police, it bypasses everyone, and it ensures justice happens. And at that point, there is a public jury trial that happens based on the evidence, and due process then occurs, because due process is fundamental to everything. And never forget jury nullification. That's always another checks and balances for we the people. That's what enables the people to keep the courts in check. So These are the two most fundamental things we could do to give the power back to the people. This justice box, I feel, is the answer, and we could put that in anywhere. It doesn't matter. Any good person that you have that you think you could ever get elected, they have a chance of being silenced, but you cannot silence this box. You cannot end this and silence this in any way. This is a way to ensure justice is always achieved. And from there, if the police won't honor it, which I think they should, I'm going to go talk to the other sheriff's candidates about this. But if they don't honor it, then we may vote and have to have a group of ourselves stand up and do it, and just have a group of citizens, and then another group that will ensure, and we can go citizens arrest these people or whatever. We can adapt and overcome anything. I think mankind can figure out anything we want and do anything in this world. So it's just a matter of trying, and what we're doing isn't necessarily working the best. So I think it's a matter of trying to do something a little bit different. And I think that will ensure justice, and that no more police or politicians or anything can be corrupt, and it will immediately put in a system of checks and balances and fix our entire power structure. Because anywhere, even federal politicians, they still live somewhere and they still commit crimes locally right where they're living. So somebody knows about the laws, or somebody knows about the crimes that they committed, and somebody can put that file in a box and say, these guys are criminals. Have a trial. Put them out there. So, yeah, from there, what I would do is, if I won, I legally couldn't do anything because I'm not legally a police officer. I would be, if you guys wrote me in and I won, then I would not be a legal police officer because I haven't passed the ethics commission. I don't have an officer's license. I've never been a police officer. So that immediately disqualifies me. But the people have spoken at that point. So I feel that their will should be honored. And that is the point to where I will stop the federal government from coming in, and that is the point to where I do everything, and I'd keep everything publicly on camera. So if somebody in the community wanted help, I would also be a police officer, and I would start what I want to call a peace officer, and to where I'm not a police officer, I'm a peace officer. So if you guys publicly elect me and I win, I will voluntarily become a peace officer and put myself out there. And like I said, I will try to stop the federal government from invading our freedoms and stopping our freedoms and taking our liberties, because I think that's one of the most important things that we can do is get our freedoms back. From there, legally what I can do is a very gray area, and legally what the federal government or what our local government and sheriff can do is a gray area. I know there's some sheriffs that are saying that they will stop the federal government too, but that puts them up for lawsuits and money that the county could lose, and there's just a big gray area there. But if I am not connected to the county in any way, shape, or form, and I step up to the federal government, I don't care. What are they going to do? They're going to give me a lawsuit? I don't have anything at all. I've devised my way to this. I don't pay taxes, and since I don't pay taxes, I can't have anything. I'm going to make a tax video so you guys can check it out on what I have and what my ideas are there. But yeah, so they can't do anything to me. There's nothing I can lose. They all they can take is my freedom, and I'm willing to, if the community votes me in, I'm willing to stand up and do that. So yeah, I guess that's where I'm at. If I'm elected, and then from there, legally, what I can do as far as people's property and going to somebody's property, I want to be able to be a peace officer and stop problems out in the world and get boots on the ground and actually help people and do things. And even try and be a counselor. You know, I think a lot of the problems are probably addicts going through stuff and people fighting when they're dealing with addictions. And if I could help them through that, I think that it would be a great thing. And I do smoke marijuana. I'm open about that. I've had stomach problems. It helps my stomach a lot. But I'd sit and even try and do the lesser. I think it's the lesser of all the drugs. And it could be substituted for a lot of worse evils that people are doing out there. And I would love to try and sit down and help people work through their addictions and stuff, and be a peace officer in this world, and settle disputes. And I think if I showed up with a camera on and everybody knew when I showed up, and I would probably, I don't know if I'd show up armed or not, unarmed. I mean, it's a very, very, I'd probably have to be armed, because I have to be able to defend myself. And that's why it becomes on the, I'd have to be invited by the property owner. Whoever owns the property, I would have to know they own the property, and I'm being invited by them before I showed up. And you can look on OnX Maps, and they'll tell you the property owner. It's an app that's for hunting, but it tells you the property, where it's at, and who owns it. And then from there, I would need a flash of a picture ID, and maybe a video call, something along those lines, and saying, hey, I own this property, I need your help, please come here. And I will show up, I will have a camera on, I will be armed, I will say, hey buddy, I'm a peace officer, can we please try and sit down and work this out? And that's my plan. And that's how I will deal with being a peace officer if elected. I'm only going to do this stuff if I get elected. I have no interest. I mean, I want to try and help the world, but man, that's a hard one. That's going to be a lot. I'm really going to be putting myself out there. There's no way I really want to do this unless I'm elected. So that's the only way. If I don't get elected, I am going to take it. I'm doing this for a year. I'm making videos for a year, and then I'm done. It's May 2nd is when my year's up, and after that, I'm going to take a vacation. Such a vacation, and just go somewhere tropical for a while maybe. But if I win, I will do this, and I will try and be a peace officer, and I'll try to do all these things that I'm saying. And this is just, it's how I figured I could do this legally and logically. So like I said, if I'm invited by the property owner and somebody comes to attack me, I can defend myself, and I'll have some weapons to defend myself, or even I may be unarmed and I may have a partner if somebody is crazy enough to do this with me. I may have a partner that may be armed or may be ready to help or whatever, but that's kind of the way I prefer it. That way I go in unarmed, and it's just it would be easier because I'm a big guy and I can generally wrestle most people down. I have a long history of wrestling, and I can just hold my own, so I don't feel a threat to most people. I'm as far, unless they have a weapon, and then obviously I'm not bulletproof. But one-on-one, I'm really not scared of much. So I feel that I could restrain most people if need be, but I don't want it to come to that at all. I want it to remain peaceful and be able to peacefully talk this stuff out. So from there, I'd also like to try and put breathalyzers in bars. Have a breathalyzer and a line, just a piece of tape on the ground for 10 foot or something, where you got to heel to toe it. And I've just learned that heel to toe is basically the best way to tell if somebody's inebriated, whether it's any drug or alcohol or even sleep. Sleep is even more dangerous than alcohol in some aspects. They say that driving tired is just as dangerous as driving drunk, which is insane because there's no laws whatsoever against driving tired. I've done it a lot. I'm sure everybody's done it a lot and driven millions. Okay, maybe not millions, but thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands of miles tired. And just it's what I had to do at the time, and it's what we do sometimes. But it's dangerous, and there's just that's where the no victim, no crime thing comes in, because where does it end? But if we locally, where we're standing, boots on the ground, instead of saying, well, they need to take care of that, and instead of putting roadblocks up and waiting for people to come through and doing it that way, why not just offer people rides and help out and have breathalyzers and lines and bars to where we work locally right where we're at, and maybe even have it in the parking lot, or even have a valet, or have a bar rule that says if you want to come to my bar, you have to turn your keys into the valet, and the valet has to see you be able to pass at least the line test where you can do heel to toe. Breathalyzers, they got to be messed with a lot, and there's so many ways, but I mean, that's a good way to tell for people to just freely, if they could just walk up and go, I wonder if I'm too drunk to drive. And they blow into the breathalyzer and they're like, oh man, yes, I am, I better not. Or they're like, no, I'm good, I'm going to go ahead and go. But still, like I said, the heel to toe, it dictates on, it's the ultimate way on how to tell, because that's your physical inebriation. Of course, some people can't because they have, I mean, they could have foot problems or even balance problems or whatever, but logically that's the best way, because if you're having problems with a lot of that other stuff, you may not be able to, especially like vertigo or something like that, or like balance. I don't know. There's just it makes it a little more dangerous to drive on the road as well. So I think that's just the best way to tell if somebody's safe. That's just my personal opinion. But if we did that in all the bars and everybody worked together, we would stop drunk driving a lot. And if we did that just even as friends and said, all right, here's the line, walk down that before you leave my house. Oh man, buddy, you're too drunk. Let me have somebody drive you or call you an Uber, whatever. Stay the night. So I think that's just, like I said, the more we can do ourselves, the better off we're going to be. We need to really try and raise our communities up and just work together to make these communities the best we can. So yeah, I want to practice what I preach, and I'm putting myself out there, and I'm trying to make my community the best I can, and I'm just doing all I can. Like I said, I'm running for sheriff strictly on the things that need to be said, and if I am somehow lucky enough to win, I legally can't win, so I will start a peace officer, and I'm going to keep everything on camera, and I'll make it public, so there'll be no qualified immunity. Everything will always be seen. I think that if we could start a local volunteer police force, we would be able to create a lot more peace in our communities locally and have a lot faster response time. And if we had people volunteer and pass some kind of mental exam and stuff like that, and have a local right in your block or in your subdivision or whatever you got going on, as local as possible, to where when something happens, there's a text that goes out to everyone, and just setting up a system to where all these communities are connected in some way or whatever, but to where they all have their own local way of connecting to each other. And if there's a problem, there's a group of 10 or something people in the community that show up. And I mean, even if it's moms that show up and are like, hey, we are here and we're going to respect your elders. I mean, that would de-escalate situations and stuff. But anyhow we can get the people to be connected and to peacefully make it happen. And I think that if everybody had a video camera on, it would eliminate qualified immunity, and we could just peacefully come together to make our communities and rise our communities up. Any way we can do that, that's what this is all about, is just making our communities as best as we can, because I think that we have hard times on our forefront, and in order to even survive through what's coming, we're going to have to come together as communities and work together for survival and for just to get through. I mean, we're on the verge of a dollar collapse. There's just a lot of things that could happen. We just depend on the system so much, and the way the structure powers, and it's so fragile in so many aspects, from just an EMP to even semiconductors not being able to be made, or just anything could just throw our a ship not being able to pass through a harbor or something, and changing supplies. I mean, our whole system is so fragile, and if it goes down at any point, we're screwed. We don't know how to survive without going to the store, and that's what we have to get to, is to where we can survive locally without going to the store, and to where we can survive locally with one another and love each other and care for each other and bring each other up instead of fighting and arguing all the time. And I think that's what the government wants. They want us to fight and argue, so that way if the dollar does collapse, or they do pull out the rug from under us and try and introduce an electronic dollar or whatever they're doing, that's what they want, is because they want us to be dependent upon them. And if everything goes down and we don't have a way to survive, we will beg them for their authority and their ways that they want to inflict. So this is ultimately freedom. Freedom is always the answer to everything, and we just got to figure out a way to get to it. And like I said, the only way I think we can do it is locally within our communities and just raising each other up. So please try and raise your brothers up, and let's work together to make this a better place. I really appreciate everybody staying along, and yeah, If anything, out of all this, this isn't about me at all. This is about the ideas. Take these ideas and run with them, and go and make your community the best you can, and just try and do something with hands-on, and don't let the government do it anymore. And do it yourself, and just make our communities and our families and our lives just the best we can. But I appreciate y'all. Thank you guys.